Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Triple O, your host. We're going to be talking about financial literacy. And people take this for granted. And I have to tell you from my own personal experience, what was it like when I decided to open my own business? I came in from a medical, from a healthcare field standpoint. Being a doctor, nobody teaches you how to run a business. And I remember trying to start my own business. I'm thinking, well, how do I do this? I spoke to a couple of my friends and they said, you need to form a corporation. And it could be, they asked me, do you want an S corporation or C corporation? I'm like, what the heck is that? I had no clue what S corporation was or C corporation. So they had to teach me and I had to read about it. And I remember going to the bank and I said, well, I do need some money to get my business started. And the banker said, you need a 5-year plan. I'm like, what's a 5-year plan? And, so she explained to me what that meant. It's a projection of where you want to be every year for the next 5 years. But luckily for me, I was a math major, so I was able to crank numbers down. So today we're going to be talking about, what it takes to start a business and how to maintain a business and how to make your business grow. So I thought it would be great to have someone who has a lot of experience in commercial banking for years, my dear friend Obed. And we're gonna have a conversation and share with you what that's like and what you can use to help you achieve your goal.
Well, I really appreciate that, Dr. O. Long-time friends. I remember when you were in a small little office when you started on Flagler.
Yes.
And you were building the firm. At the time, I was a small banker, and learning myself, but which is a very good, important topic you bring into because I watch your series on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and different things. I say, I have to come on the show to actually participate because, obviously I've been in the financial industry for over 20 years. I've managed, I don't know how many small businesses to larger businesses. So it's an important thing for me to at least talk to your audience about, especially the ones who have the spirit of entrepreneurship. They want to start their own business. Sometimes they have apprehension about it because they don't know what to do. And sometimes once you have the passion, just jump in like you did.
Yes.
So, but there are a couple of things that I particularly I want to bring to the audience, especially when you mentioned you didn't know the difference between S Corp and C Corp, but each have their own references on key points and attributes why you pick one over the other because they have tax consequences.
Can you tell us a bit about the differences?
Well, I mean, the difference is typically it depends on how many people are involved in starting the business. So typically, when you have a small business starting, you hear the word sole proprietorship, right? If it's a one-man show starting a little landscaping business, he may start at as a sole proprietor. It's just him, and he's pretty much the responsible party for everything. And then once you start getting into a little bit more complex business like yourself, you may want to be a limited liability, or if you have partnership, because each one of those segmentation has a certain consequences. And I know we don't have enough time to go into too much details, but to make it very easy, for example, an S Corp is between 1 or 2 people, typically it's 2 people. And a C Corp, typically a larger corporation that has, stocks, or for example, like, AT&T, for example, it's a C Corp, because it's not 1 or 2 people, it's a bunch of people who own stocks. But those things it depends on the person's, where they are in terms of their business. Sometimes a business can start somewhere and not end up there. You may start as a sole proprietor, but as you continue to grow, you can change that tax classification.
Now, what about people who say, I want to start my own business, but I don't know how. I don't have enough resources to start my own business. What should they do to get started?
That's a very good question because people ask me that question all the time. Well, I have an idea. I want to start this business, but I don't have the capital. I don't have the money to fund the business, that's the case for a lot of people who wants to start a business. Now, there are a lot of different ways to start. Depending on at what level you want to start, some people, they go into what they call venture capital. Like they start raising a lot of money, especially if they want to go on a bigger scale. For most people, typically, believe it or not, they ask friends, family, they come, they all put their little money together and they start. Believe it, that's what most people do. You can come to someone like me at a bank, and because I know the trajectory of that profession, especially the medical space, we can have what they call projections, like you mentioned earlier, because we know the industry. It's a profession that will bring revenue. So we can have, you look at your personal income and then what do you project to do and lend you on those projections. But for the most part, most people, they borrow from their savings, from friends, family, to start their business.
So that's great. And I think most people don't know how to save. That's the other issue. And savings is such a important factor, but given a climate where we're in, where people are always using credit cards.
Sure.
You go to Saks or Macy's and you buy a piece of clothing and you present your Visa card and they say, well, if you open an account with us, we'll give you an extra 10%.
Yeah.
And you forget that interest on that card is 30%. So it's almost like I'm giving you 10% and you give me $30 back. Yeah. I mean, it's like you're losing.
As a banker, I know the industry, I know how credit works. And I advise a lot of small business clients. I mean, the smarter ones always have what they call, a savings account. But believe it or not, most small businesses, and there's a difference between, when I say small business, typically anybody making less than $1 million in revenue, and revenue is considered a small business. And it always baffles me that most of them, they don't have what they call personal savings. Everything is into the business. So you ask them, well, what are you doing personally? Well, I have my business. But remember, when we talk about tax classification, you are not the business. The business is a separate entity. And most people, even though they have an LLC or whatever, but they don't treat the business as if it's a completely separate entity from them. They're like, I'm the business. No, you're not. It's like someone hires me to do a job. That's what it is. So when you have a business, you are an employee of that business, especially when you become an S corporation. Like, people don't think about that. You have to get a W-2 from that business because you are working for the business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
But a lot of people sometimes are like, well, it's my money, I do it. No.
No, it's not.
It doesn't work. So, I had a conversation with one of my high level. In fact, he was a doctor, big time surgeon. As his relationship manager, I got an email from my back office. And they said, well, can you have a conversation with the doctor because he's got alimony payments he's making. And they're all coming out of his business accounts. Do you want to, I'm going to have a conversation with him. And it's got to be a gentle one because, he doesn't know. Yeah. So I noticed this, can you help me understand? And he said, well, that's my money. I'm like, well, I know it is. However, there are consequences for it because those are personal stuff. So what I did was, I had him speak with his accountant, tax advisor to, and he came to me and says, man, I really appreciate you looking out for me. You really saved me because it could have cost me.
Oh yeah, huge taxes.
Well, other consequences, but those are some of the things that sometimes you have an experienced person doing what they do, but as someone who's there to guide them, and I advise them and say, listen, those are the things you're not supposed to do. And that's the thing I try to, when I'm advising small business clients, I say, you gotta have a team of people, of advisors around you. We talk all the time, and I give them the example of a business as a baby. When you have a baby, what do? You feed the baby milk, because they cannot eat solids. The business, when it first starts, it's the same thing. There are a lot of things you may not be able to do. You're not able to borrow money because no one trusts you. Just like a high school kid, we're not gonna trust you to lend you money because you don't have the experience or the maturity to borrow money, right? A lot of times people come to me, they're like, well, my business is 2 years old, I need to borrow money. I was like, well, you don't have experience yet. I might be able to give you a business credit card, but a A big term loan, not yet, because you don't have the experience. But once that kid gets to out of college, which could be 5, 6, 7 years, now guess what? You need to grow. You may want to have a girlfriend, a wife, or whatever. You want to buy a house. So now, because you've had some experience, and it's the same thing in the business cycle. After 5, 6 years, now you have some experience, you have some revenue to show for it. We're able to lend you money. Now, once you get above that, then we continue to help you grow. But there's also another asset where most people don't think about, which I'm going through 2 cases right now where people run businesses, but they don't have what they call a succession planning, which is very important, especially when you have a mature business, been around 20, 30 years. The owner doesn't think about planning to how do I pass on this business? How do I make sure it continues? That legacy. I had a conversation with a client over a year ago about succession planning. I got a phone call, a rush phone call, like I need to meet you right away. A major issue with one of the owners. I always mention that because I know business is very important to a lot of people. That's your lifeblood.
Yeah, I think that, I always say in life, we focus on teaching people certain things, such as, if you're gonna drive a car, you have to take a driving lesson.
Sure.
You have to take a test, and then they give you, if you pass those, then you get a card that says you can drive your car.
Yes.
So if you want to start a business, there is no plan, no roadmap for most people. They just kind of wing it. Don't understand why as a society, we don't spend time preparing people for success. And so it's when they fail, then they start scrambling, trying to figure things out.
That is a very excellent point, because a lot of the time, my clients, it's when something bad happens. And now I'm being made aware of it. But before the decision is made, I'm not part of that conversation. Because, I think it's mostly, I want to say ego. You know what you're doing. You don't want to feel like I have to ask permission to do what I want to do. Because that's what sometimes they feel like. I'm going to ask this guy for permission to make my decision. The most important thing is, in my experience, I've managed businesses from 0 all the way to $100 million in revenues. The one that are a little bit like between 10, 15, 20, 30 in revenues, surprisingly, they call me for everything, for every decision, for any little, they call me all the time. They talk to me all the time. But the businesses that are 2 million or less, they don't, even when I call, they don't want to talk to me. Sometimes because they just say they're busy, or they think I'm trying to sell them something. So they're like, nah, I don't want to talk because this guy's going to sell me something. In some cases, true. And the selling is, if I see something to improve the business, I'm going to make the recommendation. But a lot of times, what people don't understand, as a relationship manager, we're invested in the business, because the more you make, the better it is for us. So I am incented to make sure you're successful. If I'm calling you, I'm not calling you it's because I'm seeing ways to improve your processes, your cash flow, your whatever it is. So the clients that are doing 10, 15, they get it. But my job is to make sure the client who are doing less than that to be open-minded to get that.
It's interesting you say that, because it's not just in business, it's in everything else. And even in medicine, I always say ego kills you. I have no ego. You make mistakes when you have ego. If a surgeon or a medical doctor thinks I know it all because of my ego, you're gonna make a mistake. But if you know your limitation, when you need help, because we are not experts in everything. I'm good at what I do, but I also know what I'm not good at. So there's nothing worse than saying, yeah, I can do this, and then you mess it up, especially when it's your business. And if you screw that up, and I tell people all the time, as a business person, if I have 15 employees in my office, I'm not only responsible for 15 people, I'm responsible for 15 families.
Yes.
Each one of those persons may be responsible for 5 other folks that they're taking care of.
Yes.
If my business go down, that's 15 families that's gonna go down.
You're impacting a lot of people.
Exactly. So when you think about it that way, like it's important. And so for my employees, I tell them, I say, listen, we are a family here. So whatever you do affects the business. Whatever the business does affects you. So some people don't know that. So ego, you gotta put the ego aside.
Yeah, and like you said, and I can't say it any better. Like once you have ego in play, you're just not gonna be successful. And my definition is once you employ 5 people or more, you are no longer a small business, in my opinion, because you impacting 5 families already. What you do, your decisions got to be, not just for yourself now, because once you have 5 people working for you or more, you got to move differently. This is my passion. I've always wanted to be in the financial industry. The reason why we're talking business, and I'm sure at some point you're going to talk about on the personal side, because there's a lot of things we could talk about that. But the reason why we want to talk about business so much is business makes everything go. So you individually, you could do things for you and your family, that's great. But when you're running a business, you're impacting society in general, because you're dealing with people you don't even know. Your name, what you do, impacts a whole lot of other people. And you don't know what kind of impact even though I've known you for a long time, and believe it or not, I could talk to someone. I said, hey, do you know who Dr. Roy is? Guess what they're gonna say? Oh man, great guy. I know, it's surprising, but you don't know that. But because of what you do, you impact society, people know what your work is. And that's why it's so important to talk about business. But if you weren't in business, trust, your recognition would not be as much. Because whenever people are wanting to go into entrepreneurship, they don't know how much value they're bringing to society. And hence, they got to take it more seriously. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that's why, like, when I meet a small business customer or a client, I'm excited, because I'm like, man, you are taking the chance and the risk to impact not only your life, but the life of your surroundings. That's a big thing.
And I have to say that running a business, there are some people that are not, they don't want to run a business, but that's not their nature. I understand that.
Sure.
And there are people who love to run a business. Running a business is not an easy task by any means. But you have to have a vision. You have to have a passion. A friend of mine who's a psychiatrist said something that I found so fascinating. She said passion. He said, what's the first word in the letter passion?
Speak.
Pass. What's the last word in the word passion? On.
Yes.
And in the middle, I. Pass I on. So when you have passion in something, you're passing yourself on to others. And so having passion with anything you do is important, because I think you have to enjoy what you do too.
Yeah.
I mean, I have fun in everything I do. I have fun in it. Yeah. I'm a guy that's constantly thinking about doing something different. Yeah. I get bored easily. So,
I do too.
I mean, you can tell just by the way we talk that you're always thinking beyond what you do for a living. You're trying to help other folks. And that's when you have passion. When you don't have passion, you're not trying to help other folks.
Yeah, and it shows. When and I said, that's why I try to tell people, like, once you're passionate about something, because that's the number one ingredient you need to have.
Yeah. Then
you're gonna find people who wants to support you and help you. Because if you're passionate about something, you may not know how to start a business. When you got out of med school, you had no idea how to run a firm, a practice. But guess what? You went into the bank, you had one person guiding and coaching you, right? And the rest you're gonna take, because your passion will elevate this whole thing. So once you're passionate about it, you're not gonna find, even when you fail sometime, it's not gonna seem like failure. I'm gonna keep going. Yeah. But when you're not passionate, any little obstacle you get discouraged and you just wanna quit. Because in life or in business, you will have ups and downs.
Oh, yeah.
But the ones that are passionate about what they do, they're not gonna see these little obstacles as a reason to quit. They're gonna a reason to
And
continue.
that's a good point. I think the word failure, I think the society has coined that word to be so bad. And the reality is failure is an opportunity to learn something new.
Yeah.
It teaches you what doesn't work.
Yeah.
So when something doesn't work, it's like, oh my God, it's an opportunity.
Yeah.
And I always give an example of being in a house. You enter the front door every day. You're so used to doing it. Someday, fire breaks out in the house, the door is jammed, you can't get out through that door. That's a failure. That's something that you don't expect to happen. What do? Do you sit there and cry and just get burned to death? Or do you walk around and say, oh my God, there are 5 other doors that I was never aware of, and go through that door? So failure brings opportunity. And if you look at people who are successful, when they fail at something, they actually grow from that failure.
Of course.
We have examples of Michael Jordan, Oprah Winfrey. All these people have failed at something and they've been successful. I have failed at several things in life, but I'm still successful. And I remember when I first started my business, I know nothing about billing, for example. I gave my billing out to a company and they just messed it up. And I was losing money.
Yeah.
So what I do, I said, okay, fine. I brought a billing company to the house, consultant, and to train. I hired billing people to train my billing person how to bill, and I sat in the billing class.
Yes.
Now today, I know more about billing than my billing people because they can't tell me something foolish. I would say, no, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Because I took that failure to learn and to grow. Now I can talk, the billing. The billing, I know billing stuff.
You know every aspect of the billing process.
I know everything that involves my business. If there's a hole in the wall, I can tell you. When I did the office, I literally build the office with the builder. I walk around looking at drywall, say, hey, you frame this differently. They're looking at me like a doctor. Yes, because I learn, I do my research. Yeah. I need to be involved because I don't want to fail at anything, so I want to make sure everything works. So that passion is what drives me to do those things. So if you want to do a business, you want to start a business, I really, really advise you to make sure you have a passion about that business you're trying to do and work very hard at it and smart and seek help. Don't let ego get in your way. You don't know what you don't know. You're only going to know by asking questions. Always ask why. Why is this not working for me? Seek your, as far as like commercial banker, talk to them before you start your business. See what they have to say. While your business is ongoing, keep in touch with them because they're gonna help you. And remember, your goal is to be successful. So you need to learn as much as you can. Is there anything you can say for closing?
No, I think it's spot on. I think, we cover a lot of things and we could talk here for quite some time, but I know you have different series. The only thing I would like to be invited back at one point.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about the future series is going to include. We're going to talk about financial planning for young adults. People are just got married. How do we plan for our future? We're going to have kids. Kids going to go to college. How do we
buy
plan
that
ahead?
First house?
Exactly. So we're going to talk about that next time you come. We're going to talk about people who already are older adults. They already have kids who are in college. What about planning for retirement? What about folks who are already retired? What do we do? People want to invest. How do you invest? There's so many things we're going to talk about. So this is going to be a series and we're going to be talking about different topics. So if there's something in particular you want us to talk about, don't be shy. And it doesn't have to be on financial literacy. It could be on anything. We're here to have a conversation, to grow together. That's what we do. We're all learning. I don't know it all. We are learning. So the only way to grow is to share that information together, okay? Until next time, stay tuned. And if you like this show, click on the button below and share your comments and tell us what you want to learn about.